I think, if I'm not mistaken, we are in 1 Kings chapter 15 and 2 Chronicles chapter 13. So if you can find those two spots, we'll be flipping around in there. Does anybody need, last time we handed out, I've got a few left. I could probably get a few more from somebody if I have to. There's a breakdown. We're getting into the kings, where all the kings are going every which way. And there's this northern king and the southern king and this reign and that reign, and it gets really confusing. If anybody wants one of these, Justin, do you like them? You weren't with us last week. Anybody else that didn't get one? Boy, that's what it was all about. Checking up. Anyone else? I got just a few more, and we can always make more. If you decide afterwards that you didn't have what you thought you needed. Anyway, that will help you, I hope, keep track of which king is what where. Now I gotta find mine. I got my cheat sheet out here. I got all my crib notes out. Maybe I can keep track of where we're at. We are in the land of Israel and Judah today, and we are focused down here again in Jerusalem, which isn't shown on this map. It is right about there, just south of the line. And it's the first big changeover since the split is where we're at today. If you'll remember, we've had the big divide. Jeroboam has come back from Egypt and has been encouraged to come and participate in a bloodless coup as the northern tribes divided, split off, as God's design, as a discipline really for the nation, has split off, and the tribes have gone to the north and set up housekeeping on up in Israel, up in this area here. The towns that they're in, eventually Samaria will become kind of the center, but right now they're working their way out through here. And as we come to today, I think Tirzah, this place with all the gardens and the beautiful setting, is the headquarters for the northern kingdom in Jeroboam. And Rehoboam has been ruling out of Jerusalem down here and has these southern tribes. But Rehoboam's come to the end of his reign after his period of time has ended, and God, honoring his promise to David, has given us Rehoboam's son to take over. And so we're going to look at his reign. He was one of those guys, you will see, who probably Prince Charles would identify with today. As Prince Charles has been Prince Charles for most of his life, and because he will not become king until the queen passes away. And the queen seems to be very healthy and probably going to live a long time. You wonder if she might actually outlive him. And so that's why I think all the big focus and hoopla over Prince William and all that sort of thing, because the real suspicion is that when that changes over, it will be him. Well, that's very similar to the situation in Jerusalem as we come to this passage, is that Rehoboam has been on the throne. He started late in life. He was probably 41 when he took over. He is completing his reign and in the end of his life, and his son is going to step in, and he's only going to be in there for a very short time. And it's probably due to the fact that he's been around a long time and just got it late in life, and circumstances being what they were, he didn't last too long. And then his son will be the one that takes over after him and is there much longer. So with that, let's go to chapter 15, verse 1. And we have lost Rehoboam in the last chapter. He's been buried with his fathers in the city of David. And Abijam, his son, has become king in his place. So now in the 18th year of King Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, Abijam became king over Judah. And he reigned 3 years in Jerusalem, and his mother's name was Maacah, the daughter of Abishalom. And he walked in the sins of his father, which he had committed before him. And his heart was not wholly devoted to the Lord his God, like the heart of his father David. But for David's sake, the Lord his God gave him a lamp in Jerusalem, to raise up his son after him, and to establish Jerusalem. Because David did what was right in the sight of the Lord, and had not turned aside from anything that he commanded him all the days of his life, except in the case of Uriah the Hittite. And there was war between Rehoboam and Jeroboam all the days of his life. And the rest of the acts of Abijam and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? And there was war between Abijam and Jeroboam. And Abijam slept with his fathers, and they buried him in the city of David, and Asa his son became king in his place. Boy, short and sweet in that passage. He's in, he's out, enough said. Well, there's a little more to the story than that, and we'll find it in Chronicles. But I just wanted you to notice a couple of things that are mentioned about these guys. We talked about it before, that you see it repeatedly in the kings of Judah. You don't see it except for the very beginning of the kings of the northern tribes. You don't see reference to it, and that is, and his mother's name was. And it just bugs me no end that very, very few commentators even pick up on that fact. But there's a couple of them that note that these individuals are mentioned. And probably they are mentioned, and this one in particular, because they are influential people in the lives of these kings. And this one, we got to remind ourselves who this is. This Maacah, the daughter of Abishalom. Does anybody remember the other name for Abishalom? Absalom. We remember Absalom. Absalom was the son of David, and he's the one that did something important in the life of David in his reign. He had the not-so-bloodless coup that drove his father out of Jerusalem and nearly lost the kingdom for David. David came this close. His emotional attachment to his son and his failure to really train his son as a father nearly cost him the kingdom, and might very well have failed to allow him to come back. If you'll remember, if you go way back, Absalom was attacking him, and they probably had a superior position more than once. And David was the one that says, "Be gentle on the one Absalom for my sake." And his general said, "We cannot afford to have that happen," and violated the king's word. And remember, he was hanging in the tree by his head, and they ran him through with a spear. So he had a very unpleasant end. So God made sure that didn't happen. But if it had been up to David, he would have spared his son. Who knows how many repeats of this whole exercise we would have had. But this is the guy, and this lady is not his daughter, because he only had one daughter, and that was Tamar. You may remember Tamar. She was the reason for some of the other hard feelings among brothers. So this daughter Tamar probably is the mother of this woman, Maacah. So that's the history, the background of this wife, and we know that she must have carried something with her from that experience. I don't know exactly what it was, but we get some hints as we go along, because she lasts a lot longer than her son in this particular case. And it's interesting that she is noted just before it tells you what the general tenor of his reign was. And all they give you is kind of the synopsis of the whole general flow of things in this passage. We'll find out there's a little more to it than that as we go to Chronicles. But you'll want to note that what he did is he walked in the sins of his father, which he had committed before him. Boy, that's a lot said in that little bit. Did you catch it? He said he walked in the sins of his father, and it didn't say his fathers as in many generations in the way the nation went. He had a father, and okay, Rehoboam's your old dad. What did Rehoboam do for the nation of Judah? He's the one that allowed that to come in. He did 3 years, he hung in there pretty well, and the influences from the temple and the faithful kind of overruled him for a while, but then slowly the influence of, whether it's wives, the influence of those around him, all the stuff started coming back in. Maybe some of the things from his father Solomon that he'd already allowed to creep in through his wives. It's creeping in, it's coming in, and this guy had no ability, no will to keep it out. And what God says is, what he saw before him is where he went. Boy, I don't know about you guys that are dads or have been dads or in a position of being dads or influence among young men around you. That is scary. Because it says, son is watching dad, is watching granddad, and going, hey, if it didn't matter to them, it doesn't matter to me. And you really see that here. It'll be, in fact, what's going to be striking is when you see the reverse happen, that, well, dad was like this, but son is like that, and you got to go, why? And we'll have some of those. But this one is a real warning shot about the influence of fathers and grandfathers on sons and grandsons. It says his heart was not wholly devoted, and we'll see that he kind of did like so many, where there was a part of him that was kind of leaning the way, you know, that his great-grandfather David would have wanted, and part of him was going the other way. And we'll see that it's not a black and white. And it's a little frustrating to me. I don't know about you, but I grew up in the days of Roy Rogers, Daniel Boone, and folks like that on the television. And you always knew who the good guys and bad guys were, right? The color of their hats, it was clear. The white hats were the good guys, and the black hats were the bad guys. And it's even sort of that way today. There was an old movie thing on that I saw a piece of yesterday, last night, when I was frustrated with it. I got to clear my brain. I walked in to see the old movie Kathy's watching, and immediately, as soon as I walked in, it flashed from the good guy to the bad guy, and you knew it. The music changed. He had this trench coat thing on and a pair of humongous black binoculars, and I went, yeah, that's the bad guy. I know, I haven't been watching the movie. I know. And she goes, yep, that's it. And then the good guy comes on, you know, and the music changes, and he's the hero. It's just, we're so programmed to that. And you come here, and it's not like that. It's really frustrating. Good morning. Good morning. Believe it or not, we were probably not very far away from the last time you guys were here. We're in 1 Kings 15 this morning, and 2 Chronicles 13. Anyway, so here we are, and this guy is that frustrating mix of black hats and white hats, and there's a lot of gray in there, so we have to look close to see what the lessons are there. What I want you to do with me now is, before we go on to, it mentions there's war between these guys. Oh, it says Jeroboam and Rehoboam. There are skirmishes we don't ever read about. There's no details of them. But it says this guy, all his days of his life, so all the time that his father is reigning, he's living in the middle of these skirmishes and this back and forth stuff going on. It's part of his experience. Chronicles tells us that he was involved in a much more significant event than just a skirmish. And I want you to turn to Chronicles with me, because here's where you get the frustration with where's the white hat, black hat? Where is this guy? And it's hard to sort out. But let's look at 2 Chronicles, chapter 13. And here's where you need a little chart, because in the 18th year of King Jeroboam, it's easy now, there's only one king in the northern kingdom, so it's 18 years down. Go to Judah, that's when this guy's king. It gets worse when you're in the 37th year of XYZ and the 14th year of that guy over there, and they're back and forth. Then you want to pull out your handy-dandy chart, and it'll be simpler. So here's the deal. In the 18th year of King Jeroboam, Abijah became king over Judah. Did anybody notice anything different right off the bat? What was the guy's name in Kings? Abijam, and here it's Abijah. And you go, big deal. Well, it may not be a big deal, or it may be. Is Abijah the name that he originally was given? Because Yah is, he's the man of God. Yahweh, that's what that is. And the other one has the M on there, and it's obviously been removed or changed, whether God did it on purpose, or whether it's a transposition of someplace, or does that tell you something about the direction his life took? That he started out somewhere where God was a focus in his life, and by the time you have the recording in Kings, all of a sudden that's been removed. And he doesn't anymore represent that. I'm not sure, commentators aren't sure, but there's some suspicion in that that's indicative of something that's going on. So that ought to be kind of a heads up, ought to be looking at things when you see that. He reigned for 3 whole years in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Micaiah, the daughter of Uriel of Gibeah. And there was war between Abijah and Jeroboam. Wait a minute. His wife was who? We just heard his wife was the daughter of, or granddaughter of, Absalom. So what's the deal here? Well, obviously,
because his dad's name.
this is the other side of the family, isn't it? We're looking at the other side of the family. If Tamar is in the line, Tamar's husband was probably Uriel of Gibeah. So it's another way of talking about the same lady. Is the name is changed again. Boy, I love these clarity of the commentators who totally don't agree on why the name is changed. A bunch of them think it's copyist stuff in the Hebrew. And if you've looked at Hebrew and it means as much to you as it does to me, you'd say, oh, that's easy. It all looks the same. But there are some things they wrestle with in that Hebrew language, and so it's possible that there's some error slipped in, or possible, again, that there's a meaning in those names. And I wish I had more to tell you about that. The only thing I want to tell you is this lady is influential. Watch her. Keep an eye on her. Follow her career, because it's significant with the kings and with what happens in the nation of Judah. It says there's war here. It actually tells us, and in fact it tells us that Abijah himself in verse 3 began the battle. And it appears that, oh, hey, we got the chart up there. Can we flip back over to the map there, or the split? I want you to see, again, you'll notice the boundary line here, and it appears that Israel is pushing at the door of Judah a little bit all the time. Remember, they're trying to put in the Iron Curtain in here, and he did everything he could, we've studied, to keep his people from traveling down to Jerusalem, being influenced whatsoever by those faithful ones that are at the temple and the worship there. He doesn't want that connection. He cannot afford to have his folks going back down there. He's got to keep separate. So he's working hard at this, and apparently there are skirmishes back and forth for territory down here, and for control. There's some significant roads. Do we have that one with the roads? Am I popping around enough to make it hard? Okay, this one shows the main coast road, but what it doesn't show is there's a north-south road here too that takes you up and down through that area a little bit more, and as well as these highways. There's one here that's a main trade route, the King's Highway. There's another one up through here that goes up this way. So there's control routes through this area that control trade, and I'm sure Jeroboam and Rehoboam are arguing, and in this case his son, about control of this thing and trying to push control back and forth. So we've got that going on. We've got Abijah here beginning a battle, and he has an army of valiant warriors, or 400,000 chosen men, while Jeroboam drew up in battle formation against him with 800,000 chosen men who were valiant warriors. So here's one of these great Bible stories that you hear when you're a little kid about the battle that's set up and all these thousands of warriors out there, and that's where you get out the pictures of the shields and the spears, and which I didn't get you, I'm sorry. You got, just when you're counting on these army pictures. So you got these guys all getting set up. It's interesting that the numbers that are here, the one for Judah exactly matches when David did his no-no and counted the troops. It's the same number. The one for Israel is not. I don't know if it's significant, but it's interesting that the one side at least hadn't changed too much. But we're 2-1 lined up, and Abijah stands up on this mountain, and nobody is sure where it is. I wish I could point to the map and say, it's right there. But we know it's somewhere north of Jerusalem. We know it's in that territory that they're fighting over. And he gets up there, and here's where the black hat, white hat thing gets a little confusing. He stood on Mount, I can't even pronounce it, Zimarim, or it's one of those names you just go, that's nice. It's in the hill country of Ephraim, so we know it's up in the hill country up here. That tells us that much. And he says, listen to me, Jeroboam and all Israel. And of course my first question is, how in the world, without loudspeakers, did he get this done? He must have a really good voice. Well, he's up there and he's going to talk to these folks, and I don't know if this is intimidation tactics. There's a little bit of truth in what he's got to say. Interesting thing that he's going to tell them. Do you not know that the Lord God of Israel gave the rule over Israel forever to David and his sons by a covenant of Solomon? Yeah, they do know that. In fact, we know that Jeroboam knows that, doesn't like it, because he's trying to build this curtain in here. And the last thing he wants is his people to be reminded of this guy David and what he has. Remember, the battle cry when they left was, take your David and do what you want with him. We have no part in him to your tents, O Israel, and they left. So they rejected David's rule over them or any of his sons. And yet it's a covenant. Yet Jeroboam the son of Nebat, the servant of Solomon, son of David. Did you catch that? Did you feel that barb to Jeroboam? He's Jeroboam the son of Nebat, but he was Solomon's servant. He's just a servant. Rose up and rebelled against his master. Oh my gosh, there's another one of those rebellious guys rose up against his master. Remember the comment of Nabal? Remember Nabal, the wealthy, fat, drunk guy that insulted David? And David came and asked for payment. And he said, who in the world is this David? There are people rebelling against their masters every day. Insulted him terribly. Same insult being hurled at Jeroboam. Is he trying to give him wisdom, or is he trying to... I think he's got the spurs on. He's spurring him good. So they rebelled. And if that wasn't enough, they rebelled against his master, or his Lord, and worthless men gathered about him, scoundrels, who proved too strong for Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, when he was young and timid and could not hold his own against him. Oh, poor Dad. Dad had a rough deal. Is that the Rehoboam you remember? Who's the Rehoboam you remember? Was he this timid, poor little weak guy? Man, and these scoundrels, these nasty guys over there lined themselves with Jeroboam, just all the riffraff, the bums on the street or something, the hoods. They didn't like him. Poor Dad, he was too young and timid. Did you remember Rehoboam? My little finger is thicker than my father's waist. Remember that? Notice how he's shifted all the blame I don't know, is that in the family? We've shifted the blame. Oh, it's not us. It's those bums over there. Isn't that classic human nature, isn't it? So he just couldn't help. And now you intend to resist the kingdom of the Lord through the sons of David, being a great multitude and having with you the golden calves which Jeroboam made for gods for you. Ooh. Now here's where he's been twisting and misconstruing, and yet there's some truth in this. And you go, wow, this is confusing. So you intend to resist his kingdom because you're huge, and you brought with you these golden calves, these no gods, which he made gods for you. Have you not driven out the priests of the Lord, the sons of Aaron and the Levites, the real priesthood? And you've made for yourselves priests like the peoples of other lands. Whoever comes to consecrate himself with a young bull and 7 rams, even he may become a priest of what are no gods. These no gods of yours, did you catch what that is? If you bring this, did you hear what he told them? How do you get to be a pastor? You go online and you send in your little thing and they will email you back your certificate. You pay them $50 and you too can be a real preacher. Did you catch that? You want preachers? All you got to do is buy it. You bring the sacrifice, you're in. Anybody can be in. So you got no gods, you got anybody can be a priest. I mean, you guys, you're counting on that? Did you hear that? And he's right. I mean, he's being sarcastic and he's really sticking it to them. Here you come with your great multitudes and your gods that are no gods. And you've run out the real priests and you expect to win? Are you nuts? I don't know if you hear that or not, but that's what I hear as he's up there giving it to them. But as for us, oh, aren't we righteous? As for us, the Lord is our God, and we have not forsaken him. And yeah, wait a minute. Let me think about that. Have we? Let's see. Our nation is divided. I wonder. Yeah, but we haven't. And the sons of Aaron, true, are ministering to the Lord as priests, and the Levites attend to their work. Oh, it's so easy to say, well, hey, we're faithful. I was in church twice last year, Christmas and Easter. Hey, we're good. We're keeping the lights burning there. And every morning they burn to the Lord the burnt offerings and the fragrant incense, and the showbread is set on the clean table, and the golden lampstand with its lamps is ready to light every evening, for we keep the charge of the Lord our God. But you have forsaken him. It's true. It was going on. That was still going on, wasn't it? And a few years down the road, the Lord's going to tell them, who demanded of you this trampling of my courts? I hate this stuff. Because there was no reality in it. But yet, that's true. Why is he telling them that? Why is he pushing that issue, you think? He's standing up on the mountain. He's got half as many troops as the other guys. Why is he telling them? Why is he announcing so everybody can hear it? Why would you tell them that?
He wants to intimidate them with God is with us and not
With you. He wants them to think about that, doesn't he? Why would that maybe be an effective tactic against, in particular, the nation of Israel? What is he hoping for? You think? I'm kind of out on a limb here. But yet if you think about their history, and you think about what Jeroboam is desperately trying to do, this guy is desperately trying to undo. He's trying to strike some little chord of conscience within these folks to go, wait a minute. That is our God down there. We have seen him part the waters. We have heard the stories of the Exodus out of Egypt. We remember the stories of crossing the Jordan. We've heard that. We've seen what God has done, bringing us through battles and stuff. It's trying to get them to remember. I'm sure that's what he's trying to do. I may be all wet. I can't, there's nothing in here that says, and his strategy was. but it sure looks to me like this guy is going to use whatever he can to try to demoralize, to try to get people thinking.
He refers to them as the sons of David, so they were still
Yeah.
not so far removed. from
Yeah, that's
David's-
far away. Yeah, come on, you could be part of us. Why do you want to stand up against us? It's really interesting that, you know, it's all there. It's all, and you could be back there. Now behold, God is with us at our head, His priests and the signal trumpets to sound the alarm against you. O sons of Israel, do not fight against the Lord God of your fathers, for you will not succeed. Is He right? He's right. And isn't this frustrating? He's using its truth, and He's right, and yet He's kind of right in the fence. And just, God, I want it black and white. I want Him to be a good guy, be all over here, or be all over there, so I can keep it straight. Who's who? And who are you with, and who are you against? Even David, he had to bring up the point that he was followed everything God said, except for Uriah the Hittite. And you go, even David, it's not black and white, is it? I want my world black and white. Oh, or else that time, we probably got, this is where the movie ends and it's continued next week, right? Yeah, well, let's go on, because I want you to see what happens. And again, it's this tug of war with what's going on. Jeroboam, smart guy. This nation of Israel is no bunch of dummies. In fact, if the archaeological evidence is these guys were very successful financially, business-wise, trade-wise, just weren't very smart God-wise. But he's a smart guy, and while this guy's up giving his speech, he's got troops moving. And they're moving all the way around the backside of the ridge, and they're coming in, and he has no clue until this moment that he's surrounded. This is really, it's like, wake up time, do you believe what you were just saying? He'd set an ambush to come up from the rear so that Israel was in front of Judah, and the ambush was behind them. And when Judah turned around, behold, oh boy, they were attacked both front and rear. And then they really did. They cried to the Lord, and the priests blew the trumpets. And the men of Judah raised a war cry. And when the men of Judah raised the war cry, then it was that God routed Jeroboam and all Israel before Abijah and Judah. And when the sons of Israel fled before Judah, God gave them into their hand. And Abijah and his people defeated them with a great slaughter, so that 500,000 chosen men of Israel fell slain. Thus the sons of Israel were subdued at that time, and the sons of Judah conquered, because they trusted in the Lord, the God of their fathers. And Abijah pursued Jeroboam and captured from him several cities, Bethel and its villages, Jeshanah with its villages, and Ephron with its villages. And Jeroboam did not again recover strength in the days of Abijah, and the Lord struck him, and he died. But Abijah became powerful and took 14 wives to himself, and became the father of 22 sons and 16 daughters. And the rest of the acts of Abijah and his ways and his words are written in the treatise of the prophet Iddo. Does that leave you with a... You go, yeah, he's this great guy. He lasted 3 years. And obviously he had these wives before those last 3 years. This was his entire life's career kind of rolled out in front of us. But how can a guy who back here, it says, he walked in all the sins of his father which he had committed before him, and his heart was not wholly devoted to the Lord his God, like the heart of his father David had been. How can God come in and do this for them and say that it was because they called on him, when clearly he walked in the sins of Rehoboam and the sins of Solomon, and it wasn't a high priority. In fact, we'll find out when his son takes over what a mess the place is in, spiritually speaking. And yet God's fighting their battles. How can that be? Why would God do that?
Promise.
A promise. That's it, isn't it?
Plan and purpose.
There was a promise. And, do you remember? I keep pulling this out. Got my notes here. You got your list? This one comes right from Solomon's prayer of dedication to the temple. You can also go and find the same list in Deuteronomy. And you can even go all the way back to Moses. You can go all the way back and you'll find this same list pops up over and over and over again. And it talks about when these things happen to you, that's your chance to listen up and turn around and call on me. And one of them is being defeated before an enemy, or support when God calls them to do battle. As a prayer of support that He would answer them. I think perhaps this was a little of both of those. As they're out there, yeah, we're on the hill. Yeah, they're more numerous than us, but we're on top of the hill. We got the advantage, and and it's almost a little bit of the day they took the Ark of the Covenant out there because we're going to just beat the buggers out of those Philistines because we have the Ark here, and they took it. So that's false confidence almost. And yet when God shows them that, you're in a kind of a bad spot, there's enough faith yet in them that they say, priest, we need you now. That really is true. What he said, yeah, that's it. That's our only hope. They're surrounded. What else are you going to do? So there are times, even those of us who find ourselves out in the world and out and where we don't belong and we're out there, hey, we're so important. We got the right God and you guys don't. And then suddenly you realize, I really do need that God. And He answers us, and it's not because of us. It's answered because there was a promise.
He wasn't fighting for Judah, he was fighting for his name.
And He was out obviously promoting, He wanted to be the big guy. Yeah, you can see that going on. And yet, God says, you have declared what is true. That is who I am, and that is what I will do. And when you call on me, I will answer. And the reason I will answer, because I made a promise that I will keep a light. And it told us, it says, and even though He did that, it said that the Lord gave him a lamp, which means it gave him a son to continue the line, and it had nothing to do with the character of this guy. The rise and fall of this guy in his personal individual life will depend on his performance of the promises, is following the truth of God. So yeah, life can get rocky. It can be a mess. You can end with 3 short years in office. But the light continues, and the promise to the nation continues in spite of our failures, because the promise is based on something besides us. And we're not Israel, so all these specific promises about the land, but the principles there are the same. He says, when I fire that big shot across your bow, and you turn around and, oh my goodness, I thought I had that handled. I thought I had that covered. I keep using this as an illustration. I only use it because it got brought home to me twice yesterday. We were at a gathering for a friend's birthday, and 2 different people from out of town came and said, what happened to those fields? They're right out there at the county line. And one guy that we know fairly well, he worked for us one summer, and he said, we were driving by, and we said, oh no, those aren't Juris's fields, because I know Ron's, and they wouldn't look like that. And it's absolute disastrous mess. If you can go up and look at it. We had a wireworm infestation that take out about half the crop, and it's all weeds where there's no weed. It looks horrible. And I have to drive by it, and the whole community drives by it every day. But what do you do when you think you got a, boy, you put on the fertilizer and you sprayed all the right sprays and you did everything great. You did it all so perfect, and you turn around and the enemy's behind you. And you weren't so smart after all. God's in charge of wireworms and you're not, He's in charge of weather and whether it hails on your wheat crop or not, or it does, what happens in life. And we forget that. I think I got it all, it's all neat and tidy. We got it under control. Right up until somebody yells fire and you go, it's gone. And when you turn around and you say, I heard that shot, Lord. I saw that thing go across my bow. Oh my gosh, I'm not in charge of anything. You are. And he says, I'll honor that because I made a promise. And the promise is not in you, it's in my Son in whom I am well pleased. He paid the price. He made the sacrifice. I apply it to you, and you're forgiven, and you're blessed because of Him. Wow. And here they are, total mess. The nation's in shambles. And God says, I'll give you a light. I'll give you a victory. And I'll keep you alive. I'm not going to allow Israel to destroy Judah because I made a promise to David. It won't happen. And if you claim that, you got it.
I think it's interesting. I mean, the people of Israel were from the same, and Elijah had just reminded them of that. They didn't call him Lord.
Yeah.
That would have been interesting.
Yeah, wouldn't that have been interesting if Israel suddenly says, wait a minute, what are we doing here? Yeah, they're part of the same promise. And they've totally forgotten it. On their side, obviously, it's totally gone down the tubes, and they missed it. And they should have, being defeated like that, should have been a wake-up call. Wait a minute, we're not fighting each other in our promised land? They're getting nervous out there. I gotta quit. That's the bad part of being in here is people get really nervous when they think there's not going to be room for the service. We gotta stop. Let's wind it up. Father, we thank you for our time this morning and for this chance to peek into your scriptures. And there's so much we've surely lost in not understanding the Hebrew and the ins and outs of the Hebrew language and the grammar and all that would give us even further clues. But yet, Father, help us to understand that this thing isn't about us, and it's not about us being perfect people. It's not about us impressing you somehow with our goodness or our holiness or how wonderful we are. But it's about us recognizing that you've made a promise to us and us accepting that promise that you've made and applying it to our lives. That your Son paid the price for us. He has covered all of our sin. That there is no sin that we have committed that is beyond the ability of your grace to cover through His sacrifice. And that when those things come in our lives, no matter how messed up we might be, that the promise holds true. And that when we turn to you, you will be there. Father, thank you for using these things of life to call us to yourself, to be that warning, to turn us around and to draw us back to yourself when we're running so hard the other way. Help us to gain insight in the lives of these kings and the people in these lands. Help us to see them as real people with hearts and souls and minds just like us, that face the same challenges, though many years ago in a different culture and a different time, that our human experience is still very much the same, and help us to realize that we're really no different there, and be able to recognize your grace when we see it, and be able to give you praise and thanks for it. Thank you for our time this morning, Jesus.